fellow seekers for the new consciousness, I bring greetings to you all from my colleagues in the ashram at Panditji and from Aurobindo. Some of you may be knowing that we have been working in our own modest way in preparing for the new world, a new way of thinking, feeling and living. Sri Aurobindo was one of the major thinkers of the present century to envisage the giant strides of change that the world has been taking even before the First World War. He warned that the world was set to change, and he said that the two major developments which will completely alter the situation had already taken place. This he wrote in 1920. One was the awakening of Asia. Two, the Bolshevist revolution in Russia. We have a slightly different way of looking at revolutions than is common. Sri Aurobindo hailed the Russian Revolution not because of what it actually did, but of the large way it opened for the advance of humanity. Can you imagine the old feudal society of Russia being what it is without the changes brought about by the revolution? Similarly, in China, no government of the traditional type could have brought out the change. I remember there was an Australian journalist. He once asked the mother, as you know, was the collaborator of Sri Aurobindo and our yoga teacher, much more than a teacher. So the journalist from Australia, he was at that time very much exercised over the Chinese occupation of Tibet. So he asked, how is it that the Tibetans, who are so religious, have been invaded and almost appropriated by the communist power? She said that when a whole people are on the move, it shows that the country was slogging. A time had come for change, and a country like Tibet, with its practices and backward looking vision, could not have moved forward without some such violent shake-up. Right from the beginning of the century, events have been happening at such a rapid rate that it has been said that more changes have taken place during the last 50 years than the previous 300 years. And the rate at which we are going to change now will be in a geometrical progression. And it is in this context that I would recommend to you some of the thoughts and concepts on the universal man. You will say, at least some of you, that the concept of universal man is not something new. It has been there from times of old. True. Certain divine truths, seminal truths, they float in the earth atmosphere till they become articulate in the mind of man, and they take the form of ideas, strong ideas. And a few of these ideas which the mind wants to realize one day, they are cherished as ideals. And these ideals govern the higher mind of humanity in an indirect way. But a time comes when such ideals insist on being actualized. An ideal insists on being an actual at some point in history. And the concept of the universal man, the cosmic man, is today very urgent. Humanity will not be able to progress further on the ladder of consciousness unless it makes a transition from the individual man to the universal man. Sri Aurobindo conceives of this progression of man in terms of the evolution of consciousness. You would ask, but how did the consciousness get there at all? Who brought this consciousness here? I remember it was somewhere in 1934 that a French thinker and writer, Maurice Magre by name, he wrote a letter to the mother asking, how is it that if God has created this world, God who is all love and peace, why should there be so much of pain, suffering, disharmony? Sri Aurobindo answered that letter, and that is issued now under the title The Riddle of This World. He says that the plane of existence from where the whole thing started is beyond the conception of the human mind as it is. The human intellect cannot conceive of it. But some idea can be given through a certain poetic image. And as you know, Sri Aurobindo was a poet, a born poet. He describes there is a divine being full of glory, glory of consciousness, bliss, power, alone. As he is musing, an idea occurs. Can this exist in totally different conditions, opposite conditions? And the moment the idea possibility occurs, it renders itself into an actuality. There is a plunge of the divine consciousness, what is called evolution, straight to the earth, straight down. And when it is about to touch its nadir of fall, descent, it finds it is about to lose its consciousness. It sends a call to the parent divine, and in response there is a ray of light, and that is the first descent of the divine grace on earth in creation. That reclaimed the soul and set it back on the return journey. First the devolution, involution, in which existence becomes non-existence, bliss becomes non-sentience, and consciousness becomes inconscience. From there it has to grow, develop, and touch back the original divine point, divine summit, but with something more. If God has come down on earth, when he returns, he is going to be something more than the original Godhead. In his Savitri, Sri Aurobindo describes Godhead greater by a human fall. Now this consciousness, gradually matter is formed, fragmented matter, and from inside it goes on urging to develop. This is called the nisus. And you know, everyone is familiar. There is the mineral and the stone stage, the biophysical stage, the moving life, the crawling creatures, the animal stage, till the human stage arrives some millions of years ago. And it is from this stage that it is important for us to see how man has developed. First, it is the physical man. Man, he has a sensational existence. Everything is in terms of matter. Physical existence, physical senses, physical evidence, creature comforts. He doesn't care for mental culture. He doesn't care for anything, right or wrong. All that he is concerned is the physical satisfaction. And it is not that that stage is over. There are still societies on earth where man is essentially physical man. We too, even in a city like London or New York, we have specimens of physical men who live most of their life at the physical level, satisfied. They don't feel the need of adding new values. Inertia, lethargy, sensations, creature living. This is what is called the physical man. It corresponds in Indian terminology to the predominant rule of tamas. There are three qualities, three modes of nature in Indian philosophy. Tamas is that quality of stability, inertia, laziness, resistance to movement. Stay put. Nature insists upon this quality being fully developed before it allows the next step in progress. So this physical man, he rules the earth for centuries, millenniums, and gradually there is the vital man, man in whom there is the surge of vitality, what we call in India the rajas, the dynamic quality of life energy. And he is interested in expanding, in moving out, in self-aggrandizement, in claiming new domains for his rule. He is not concerned with the right or wrong, but success. What is successful is enough for him. This is the vital man, the vital stage in the development of consciousness, where movement, energy, activity is the dominant motive. The third stage comes when we have the mental man. Most of us are in that stage, where though we have a physical dimension, a vital side of life, it is primarily the mind that rules. It is in this sense that we say man is a mental being. Before we do anything, we have an idea. Before we have a thing before us, we judge it. So this is the mental man who has gone beyond inertia, sloth, has learned to control his energies, but gives a direction. He believes in balance, enlightenment. This corresponds to the sattva, the element of harmony, balance. Most of humanity, educated, cultured, they live at this stage. The man has arrived at a mental stage, what you call a mental man. And in the beginning, even the mental man is very selfish, self-centered, his own needs, his own concerns. But gradually, he develops the sense of commonality, of others. And during the last 100 years, we have what is called the religion of humanity, where mentally there is an acceptance that there is one humanity and the welfare of all should be our legitimate concern. Not my country, not my society, but the entire globe. So even writing as early as 1916, Sri Aurobindo said that we feel the beginnings of a global consciousness, a global outlook. And that was even before the League of Nations was formed. And today, we find in the activities of the UNESCO and the other specialized agencies of the United Nations an application of this global approach, global outlook. It is only in political and military matters that the United Nations is lagging behind. But in other spheres, there is a certain world approach. This is as far as man can go. But even a developed man, mental man, he is at heart an individual. That individualist outlook which started with the French Revolution continues only, is not wrong, but it is organized around our ego. Even our altruism has a certain selfish motive. If we analyze many of our charities, many of our public activities, we find either an individual ego or a collective ego. So a time has come, if human progress is to further, that the basis has to change from the ego to something deeper. Sri Aurobindo points out how mistaking the ego for the soul, how many wrong things have happened. He has developed his philosophy of what is called a group soul, a nation's soul. Even as an individual has a soul, collectivity of individuals, societies, nations, they have their own emerging soul. And he points out how the German leaders, the German mind, mistook the German national ego for the national soul, and they came to disaster. So each people have to beware of this ego and find their own soul. Man too has to do it. In his Life Divine, Sri Aurobindo points out that in each person, evolving person, there is first what is called the desire soul, constituted of ego and desire. Behind is the true soul. Most of our civilizations are centered on this desire soul. If we are to avoid the past mistakes, if our extension of consciousness, enlargement of vision has to be meaningful, the basis, the foundations have to be shifted inwards. We have to plunge inwards and find the true center. Shift the center of reference from the surface to within. This he calls realization of the psychic being, the true evolving soul. It is only when this center is found that you can be truly universal, truly one with others. Otherwise, there is a danger of confusing my ego with what is good for the world. Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini are classic examples of how they honestly thought that what they thought was good for the world. They confused their own ego with their inner being. This is a thing that man has to avoid, and that is where, before one can extend and universalize and broaden one's outlook, one has to deepen one's consciousness. And when you deepen your consciousness, find yourself at the psychic level, you find an automatic, spontaneous unity. A spontaneous love flows on all. You feel one with the trees and the flowers and the animals. You just don't understand why there is friction, why there is violence. Anything ugly, anything violent jars on your mind. That is the psychic consciousness. When one has that consciousness, one calls him a saint. A saint is one who has contacted the divine presence here and oozes that sweetness, oozes that joy, that universality. Now, the one difficulty is there, that we identify ourselves even with the sufferings of others, as if our own sufferings are not enough. In Savitri, he describes how one's heart beats in unison with other hearts. The joys and griefs of all pass through one's heart, and one suffers. The way out is to develop a certain impersonality. As long as you are personal, you suffer. If you develop an impersonal consciousness, a consciousness of equality, equanimity, not touched by anything but watching everything, then these waves of joy and suffering of the world pass through. But you have the strength, you have the power to reach help to the persons. And this calls for spiritualization of consciousness, opening of the being to higher levels of consciousness than the limited logical intellect, sensational mind, intellectual mind, the reasoning mind. One has to silence the mind, quieten the mind. That's for what meditation, concentration is done, contemplation. You silence the mind, keep out the waves of thoughts, and when the mind is silent, a higher peace, a working of a higher consciousness starts. And slowly faculties of inspiration, illumination, intuition, identity, they begin to normalize. And Sri Aurobindo's philosophy, teaching, demands that you integrate these powers, the workings of these faculties in your whole being. His approach, the mother's approach, is not withdrawal from the world, salvation of the soul, but perfection of life, manifestation of higher divine powers in life, elevate life, beautify life, establish the kingdom of God on earth. And for that each individual has first to find the divine center in himself, and next to spiritualize. There is no religion here. There is no philosophy here. In our day-to-day life, we start doing the homework, forget ourselves, always give preference, priority to others. The head of a family must become the soul of the family, not the head. He must identify himself with others. Now this cultivation of universality of outlook, universality of feeling, that is spiritualization, enlargement of consciousness, not in the name of yoga, not in the name of philosophy. Narrow the consciousness and plunge into oneself and be lost to the world, but to find the center and from there surge out. This is the demand of the time spirit today. And a universal man, a cosmic man, one whose thinking, whose feeling, whose very body vibrations are in tune with the universals. That is a demand and a must. Before man can become a superman, he has to become a universal man. No man can become a divine man unless he first universalizes himself. And the way to do it is, as I have said, a culturing of consciousness, deepening of consciousness, silencing of the mind, keeping it open to the ingressions, to the descents of the higher powers of truth, of consciousness, of the higher mind, till the truth consciousness, the Gnostic consciousness is established in you. It will take a long time for the generality of people to benefit by such change. But you know, progress is always led by a minority. And it is the responsibility of a few, like those who have gathered here, to apply themselves to the problem. and generate dynamos of universal consciousness, which will spread out in the universe. What we see physically is not everything. 9/10 of life is behind. We see only the results, physical results. But behind a physical result, what is the chain of causes and earlier causes is quite different. Sri Aurobindo said somewhere, a yogi on the slopes of Himalayas, the mountains, dreamed at one time of liberty, equality, and fraternity. It took some time before that dream translated itself into the French Revolution. But what happened? Generally, when great divine truth, yes. The question is about Sri Aurobindo's poem on Kuthumi. Sri Aurobindo wrote it very early, during the days when theosophy was at its height, and the theosophical movement believes in what are called the adepts. They believe that there are some beings, not in a physical body, but those who were once men, who have gone beyond humanity, but are guiding the fortunes of humanity from above. And they are said to be living somewhere in the Himalayas, the northern mountains in India, and from there guiding, taking human forms now and then, appearing in London, appearing in Bombay and all that. One of them is Kuthumi. And at that time, Sri Aurobindo wrote the poem, mildly drawing attention that it is not exactly like that. But a Kuthumi could be a vital being, a denizen, a being of the vital world, who can be benevolent. There are malevolent beings, benevolent beings. So Sri Aurobindo looks upon Kuthumi as a benevolent being, but not as a savior of humanity, but as a benevolent force. He just pointed out that you can't be drawing your guidance and things from that source. You have to learn to draw it from here. One of the new features of the new age will be, it has been my favorite theme, that hereafter there will be no gurus. There will be guides, but no gurus. Guru is a very convenient phenomenon for people to become lazy, you see, and allow themselves to be exploited. Sri Aurobindo points out that the true guru, the true world teacher is here. And all human agencies, scriptures, they are agents to awaken our sense of the presence inside. So, hereafter, as humanity advances, men will learn to draw guidance from within and not from a priest, not from a spiritual teacher of that old type, but maybe guides, yes. There are people who are more advanced, who have practiced more, we may go and consult them, but it will be my responsibility to decide whether that thing suits me. So each individual carries his own destiny. Human consciousness has developed to that level that hereafter we don't need the paraphernalia of religion, of spiritual hierarchy of gurus or mahatmas, but awaken that sense that psychic sense of discrimination, spontaneous action, and that you can't do unless you eliminate the ego, which is a vitiating factor.
As you said, most people are lost spiritually today. How is this knowledge of an inner self even awakened without an agency of something like a guru or a teacher on the level of a guru today? How will, and you say the New Age, how will this change? Because won't it always be a situation of the minority of people realizing this basic element in themselves? I mean, the New Age seems like a dream.
People, everybody, the majority of people, the bulk of people can't function on the basis of the inner teacher truth. They have to draw help or to be taught how to draw help by those who are more advanced. But they will be guides. A guru in the spiritual sense is much more. He takes your responsibility. A true guru is one who takes the responsibility of your evolution, puts an emanation of his in your being and helps you. That means he is a genuine one who has already realized that truth which you are seeking. But today the situation is so confused that for one or two true gurus, there will be 98 fakes. That has come just to teach man to depend upon himself. You have to progress through method of trial and error, but you can always draw guidance from people who are of integrity, who are more advanced, without putting the burden on him. Till now, the disciples would put the burden on the teacher and would not move a step unless the teacher told to do. That was considered a part of the discipline between the guru and the disciple. He absolutely surrenders his will to the divine will through the teacher. But today we don't need to do that. But man has to learn to be humble. The one indispensable requirement to learn is to be humble, to have a certain inner humility, not an outer show of humility. And when you have that humility, it is my experience and the experience of those like me that the divine consciousness creates situations in which you know the thing, either through somebody coming and telling, either some book coming to your hands, or something happening, and you know. So it is, I know it is a difficult thing, but we have to replace the guru by a guide. We read so many books, we benefit by them, we practice them. I don't mean to say that the gurus as such will be extinct as a race, no. But this phenomena of spiritual life being indispensable on finding a guru, it won't work anymore. Because till now it is only a minority that would wake to spiritual truths. Now we are entering into what is called a spiritual age. More and more numbers of people are awaking, and they are dissatisfied with the old values, new values. So we are passing through a period of transition, and instead of putting new idols, new gods in the place of the old, we have to teach man to find God in himself. A progressive enlightenment, dissemination of the right thought, example. These are the methods. A spiritual teacher need not be on a higher pedestal. He can be like equals. And that is what is going to come. Sri Aurobindo says a guru is a child leading children, a light kindling other lights, a power of God calling other powers of God to him. Today, the institution of guruhood has been commercialized, cheapened the whole thing. So we have to be very discriminate.
In that connection, I wonder if you'd like to comment on the Maharshi and TM.
I wouldn't like to comment on the Maharshi, though I would say something about the TM. Now, TM, because I have met number of people who took initiation and who have practiced and who are practicing it, those who have left it. My own perception is that it opens the window to a new dimension of existence. It helps you to relax from the physical tension and feel restful. But it stops there. You have to follow it up on your own. Those who use it as a starting point, they have gone far. But those who just took there 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening, well, after some time they said this is only a way of relaxation and they left it. But it has to be used as a springboard to go deeper. And when they say that when you repeat that mantra, you go to the source of thought, it is not true. You go behind the physical layer where this agitation is not there, that's all. Thereafter, you have to naturalize it. 20 minutes of meditation is not enough for that.
The TM people now have a course entitled the Cities course, which is encouraging the chasing of psychic powers. What?
No, sir, it is a very dangerous thing.
I know, I was going to ask what your comment on this would be.
And psychic powers are a truth, are a fact. Levitation is a fact. It is possible by certain manipulations of breath, displacing the foci of life energies in the body, to lighten the body so much that it escapes the law of gravitation. This has been seen, experienced and verifiable if you follow the technique in Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga. There is nothing spiritual about it. It is a technique. But what is advertised, I don't think it is true. It can't be true on that scale, and it is very unethical, unspiritual to use that as a bait to draw customers. No. How does it help? How does it help my and spiritual evolution if I can fly in the air? How does it? See, actually, you will believe me that most of the genuine yogis, when this happens, they are not conscious. They do not try. But by itself it happens. My teacher, Sri Aurobindo, he was in jail for revolutionary activity in 1908 to 9. So one day when he was, some other convicts were passing by his cell, they found him 1 foot above the ground. So afterwards, when they met him, they told him, you are doing like this. He said, I didn't know. They said, yes, you are 1 foot above. Then he explained that this working of the yoga force must have lightened the body, but I was not conscious. And these are all tricks, playthings in yoga. They have their use at certain times, not this particular thing, to be able to be present in many spots at the same time. That could be useful for humanity. You see, something like that. Or to know what is going to happen, prevision, provided you make the right use of it. But these things are never cultivated. They just blossom as the deeper consciousness gets established. Each level of consciousness has its own functioning. When a higher functioning appears before us, we say it is a miracle, it is a supernatural power. But for the person who wields it, it is not supernatural. So I was told that there was a lot of advertisement of a number of people flying, and a Canadian scientist challenged it. I don't know what happened, but I don't believe it can be done on that scale. Yes, 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 yes. It can be a good opening to anybody. To anybody, it can be open. One doesn't need to believe in God. One can be an atheist, So it can open a door. So from that point of view, I am always grateful, and I always pay my tribute to Mahesh Yogi for having familiarized the American mind with the concept of meditation. Those people are always rushing so much, They would never believe otherwise. And they did, I know it for certain, that they did introduce all these methods in jails and commercial firms for their own interests. They had a meditation room so that their staff could work with double efficiency. All that is true. Those people are very good at making commercial use of everything. And it is true, but he has done great service by familiarizing that concept of meditation. Who? Sai Baba. Well, he says he is neither a guru or a teacher but God himself. He says, I am an avatar of God. But having not met him, not having personal experience of him, I would say that he is a guru to those who accept him as their guru. For me and you who have not gone to him, if we find something that he says or writes useful, he becomes a guide. But for those who accept him as their guru, I have known he taking responsibility for them. He appears in their dreams, he warns them of an accident, in times of accidents he lifts them out, all that I have known. So he is both a guru and a guide. Yes?
You mentioned appearing in a dream. How does this work? Does it happen because of the devotee willing it to happen, or can the conscious effort of the guru and teacher actually?
What happens, sir, is, as I explained, when there is a guru in a true sense, who takes up the disciple in the folds of his consciousness, an emanation of him, that guru, goes and dwells in the disciple. And that helps, that guides, that protects. whenever anything happens, when you see his form, it is that emanation in you, his emanation, appearing as his form. He himself here may not be aware of what is happening here in his frontal consciousness. But that emanation works, whether you are conscious of it or not. That's the beauty of the Guru relation. Whether you are conscious of it or not, it works. But those who can do that are very, very few. Yes, please. I know, you are correct. You have done it correctly. Yes. Non-being, the shunya of the Buddhist, is what we may call non-existence, non-being. That is a state or a zone of consciousness in which you enter when you go or step beyond the thinking mind. When, by any kind of discipline, you thin the mind, let it go into a kind of swoon, you feel there is nothing. At the gates of the transcendent, you meet the shunya, nirvana. It is a great liberating experience. If you stop there and organize that experience into a realization, everything is shunya for you. But if you use that as a liberation, then the further realms of consciousness become clear to you. Sri Aurobindo has devoted a whole canto in his last work, Epic Savitri, on this kingdom of the self, where all that exists, all that moves, looks like a shadow. The Vedanta, Indian Vedanta, feels that the self alone is true. Everything else is a shadow, a show. The Buddhists, there is a difference of interpretation. Some say that even that self is not there. Even the self goes. Some other Buddhists say no, the self is there after all. It is that self which feels everything to be non-existent. To experience a thing as shunya, an experiencer is required, the self. So, Sri Aurobindo integrates that Buddhist shunya as the state of cessation of all activity, cessation of all movement, and an interregnum between the lower and the higher. It has a great liberating effect.
Sorry, I'm just wondering a question. Does that liberating effect,
Yes,
right,
yes.
does that include capacity for action? Or
Yeah.
does it mean that one is able to act from that state without necessarily bound by action?
The traditional interpretation is that you reject action because action is no more relevant to you, and you lapse into that silence. But Buddha's own life shows that basing himself on that silence, he acted powerfully in the world. Sri Aurobindo says he was the most powerful human personality that lived and produced results on earth. And Sri Aurobindo's own teaching insists that this state of inner liberation, inner static poise, has to become the base on which dynamic activity continues. And action can be as meaningful as the supporting liberation inside. So there has to be a kind of bifurcation of consciousness in the beginning. One part liberated, silent. The other part active, dynamic. Now it is this conception that is described in the Tantras as Shiva and Shakti, the static and the dynamic. And the ideal man in this perspective is one in whom one consciousness, two levels.
I wonder if I can ask about another group of meditation, another meditation movement I've heard of, the Ekanda. I believe their leader is called Darwin Gross. He's an American and is supposed to have come from Tibet via some ancient esoteric way. Have you heard of them?
No.
I've got a very good, interesting concept with it, the man to grow grow straight like a tree must follow his own nature.
Yes, the basic ideas seem very similar to all, but I wonder if you have...
No, madam. I wish I had known. Yes?
Could you talk about methods of meditation? What is the length of time one should meditate?
Meditation.
How long? And what
See, there are, many types of meditation. Each depending for its technique on the aim you have before you. But certain common features are, in the beginning, you have to have certain fixed periods. Not too long, not too brief. First, there must be a physical posture in which you can sit for a length of time without feeling discomfort in the body. You have to learn what is a natural position for you in which you can forget the body. Second, you do a little bit of deep breathing, because the state of your mind, mental activity, has close connection with your breathing. So by drawing deep breaths, you slow down the mental activity, bring the mind into focus. After that, you must have a theme on which you can center the mind. It can be a form, it can be a sound, it can be an idea, it can be an experience. God as love, God as beauty, God in the certain form that appeals to you. Whatever it is, some subtle object must be there. and all your mental faculties are fixed. This fixation is called concentration, which is different from meditation. In the very nature of things, you can't keep things fixed for a long time. After a few minutes, you just relax. Let your mind, your consciousness flow on that theme. And as it go on, a stage comes when you forget yourself and become one with the object of meditation. This is the process. But what happens? The moment you sit like that, you become conscious of an invasion of thoughts, irrelevant thoughts, thoughts which have nothing to do with what you want to meditate upon. One way to deal with the situation is to let the mind, let the thoughts flow. You don't participate in the thought movement. Observe. Go on observing. It will reveal many nooks and corners in yourself which need to be attended to. Gradually, in the absence of your participation, the flow slows down and it will come to a standstill. The second way is to treat each thought as an outsider and keep it out the moment it tries to come. A very laborious method. Third, and perhaps you will find it more practical, that is to keep the bulk of the mind turned towards the object of your meditation and letting thoughts come and go on the surface mind. The mind takes cognizance of what comes, but it is generally centered on that object. You are listening to me. Many sounds are in the air. The mind registers, but your attention to me is not affected by that. This gradually leads a surface mind attending to the thoughts, the bulk of the mind busy, concentrated on what is inside, the object of meditation, leads to a certain bifurcation of consciousness, which is found extremely useful in spiritual time. But the experience of some others also has been that there is a certain resistance to new spiritual thought in this country. They are satisfied with their religion. Those who are not, they are interested in Buddhism. I mean the serious type. And these new consciousness and new things have not been able to make that impact on the English mind as they have been able to do elsewhere. I may be wrong, but that's the impression and the feeling I have. I would like to be corrected.
Well, I was just wondering, and here I'm not talking about national characteristics, especially because it's a mixed audience.
Yes, mixed audience.
But I was wondering about something you were saying earlier on about the New Age being one characterised by a lack of gurus, that people won't just adopt gurus like that. That something, I mean, there has been over the past few years tremendous turning, especially amongst young people obviously, but also amongst other generations, towards ideas from the East, and specifically towards figures from the East. And whether, how you would look at that.
I have found
in terms of that perhaps there's also a kind of escapism involved in that in relation to the kind of conditions in which we live. And
yes. my study and observation of the various experiments in the world on spiritual communities as nuclei of the future humanity is that where they have depended upon one person to guide and lead, those communities have died after the leader has died. In America there are plentiful instances. But places where they developed their own communications, their own judgment, things have been proceeding. The original person is made an inspiration, his ideas, his thoughts, but they have been improved upon, added to. And Aurobindo has a chance of success because of this. That the mother said that while Sri Aurobindo and herself are the pioneers of that movement, truth is to be their guide. Truth is to be their leader. And today in Aurobindo there is no leader. There is no boss. They all govern themselves. Whatever difficulties, whatever misunderstandings does not matter. Concerned people meet in the evenings, discuss their problems, try to solve them. If they can't solve, they postpone the problem. That's what happens. If the problems will wait for them. That way, it looks as if it is a waste of thing, but I find that's the way. They are developing a certain self-confidence. And they won't accept, this kind of leadership from anybody. Each person is a leader. So, Aurobindo, there is no leader today. Mother gave a start, and after she left her physical body, there has been nobody who can occupy that place, nor is there necessity to occupy. Such communities have a chance of success. Also, my another observation is the number should not exceed a certain manageable number. Where there are more people than you can manage, well, a kind of mechanization sets in.
What do you mean by the term manage? Because you just said there's a situation without a boss, and yet the term manage seems to imply that somebody is controlling.
No, but within themselves. Within themselves.
You mean so that it's like a number of people that you can comfortably hold in your consciousness?
Yes, you are right. You have put it right. That's right. You must know each person. You must be identified with everybody. But that can be done in our present consciousness up to a limit. Beyond that, it is just a name. There was a time in my ashram when I used to know the name and house and everything of everybody. For some time, I was as the secretary of the place. I used to know everything, till the number became about 1,000. But after that I lost touch, I see a face but I don't remember. And I don't know what is happening to him. I don't see how I can help the other person. He has to come and explain to me each time, otherwise I would be in touch. A way in which I could be helpful. Anytime he brought anything for me to speak to mother, I would remember his background. But once it goes beyond, it is difficult. So it has to be in manageable proportions.
And yet the projection at one time was somewhere around 3,000 or 4,000 people for it.
50,000.
50,000.
But now we have come to the conclusion that you should have independent settlements. You may have more, but each unit shall not exceed a certain number. Each unit must have its own life. Then there can be a coordination between the different units.
I'd just like to say thank you very much.
Well, I am thankful to you all.
Thoughts go with you on your
May I ask a question, please?
Yes, please.
We kind of just
I'm leaving day after tomorrow, and this was the only engagement I had this time, because last week we were in Germany, and I expect to come back somewhere in January on my way back from America. And if at that time any engagements are offered, I'll gladly accept them. Because this is the first time I have had such a meeting, a communion of consciousness, where I have benefited, and it has been a spiritual experience for me to communicate with you all. There is a certain solidarity of consciousness which is very encouraging. Thank you all.